America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Alfredo Ortiz, CEO of Job Creators Network.
And you can subscribe to the show at Salem Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts from. Today, we're very excited. We're joined by Charlie Gasparino. Charlie's a senior correspondent at Fox Business Network. He provides on-air reporting throughout the business day, covering the latest news involving major events impacting finance, the economy, and politics. Throughout his tenure with the network, Charlie has been credited with being at the forefront of a number of breaking news stories in politics and finance. He's also the author of the soon-to-be-released new book, Go Woke, Go Broke, the inside story of the radicalization of corporate America. Can't wait to hear about that. Charlie, welcome to Main Street Matters.
Thanks for having me. And by the way, Job Creators Network, where Bernie Marcus and Alfredo have cameos in the book.
Thanks, Charlie. I can't wait to see that.
Well, Charlie, I'm dying to know what your analysis of the presidential race is at this point, with everything that's happened.
Listen, I still think it's going to be close. Obviously, Donald Trump's got the Republican nomination locked up. I don't think Biden's going to bow out. And I think if it was anybody but Trump, he probably would bow out. I think that they feel prety confident. And by the way, the Democrats don't have a strong bench. I mean, Gavin Newsom, talk all you want about him. I mean, all you have to do is run on California, and more than half the country will hate it. Gretchen Whitmer, untested. Josh Shapiro, again, doesn't have a national profile.
Right.
And Michelle Obama, once she starts opening her mouth, and she's actually said she's not running now, but she sounds, she seems good until you start hearing her.
But I think Charlie Hitler also said he wasn't going to invade the other countries. So
say that again.
I said Hitler also said he wasn't going to invade the other countries.
Yeah, no, I know, but so what you got is you really do. He's really their best shot, and by the way, they've lined up the best candidate that he could be, and it's Donald Trump for all the baggage that he brings to the table. That said, here's where it gets, I think, really funky for the Democratic Party. You really are telling the American people they have to vote for a guy, take a leap of faith and vote for a guy who is so demonstrably addled from just mentally addled. I mean, it really is sad. I mean, you're actually telling him to take that leap. And even as crazy as Trump is, and we're going to be hearing a lot more about January 6th, obviously. We're going to be hearing a lot more about shooting bleach into your arm to cure COVID. I mean, they're going to come at him with everything. But is as much bag as Trump has, think about the leap of faith you have to vote for Joe Biden. He is he's not a good president. I mean, we know that on the merits, right? But then you throw on top of that, he really is mentally deficient at this point,
right?
And maybe even physically. I think that's a really tough sell, man.
Yeah, when I see a video of him even just a year ago, and then 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you can just see the deterioration of him every year and how much worse he is. Just real quick before Alfredo jumps in, what do you think Trump's winning message is, and what do you think Biden's winning message is?
Well, I mean, it could be a race to the bottom I mean, listen, I don't. If Trump was smart, I think just and I'm not Karl Rove. What do I know? I'm just a simple country reporter. I say you focus on the economy, the wall. You don't go off on tangents about 2020 being a rigged election and all this stupid stuff. You keep the crazy town to a minimum, which you won't. But that's how Trump should win. If you're Biden, you really do focus specifically and harshly on Trump, the persona, because his persona scores very low with majority of the American people. And, as a bridge too far, he is too nuts. Do you really want the chaos that he brought? And, and all you have to do is replay clips of 2020 of all this stuff, replay his tweets, going after people, weird stuff. And, because he does engage in some weird things. And so, again, I think these two candidates are tailor-made for each other because they're just both so bad. And they're the only one that could beat the other one. I mean, as candidates. Listen, if you ask me for my opinion on policy, of course, Trump is, policies are better. I mean, less government theoretically, although he spends like crazy. He would close the border, which, I'm for. He would ramp back immigration, or at least make it a policy that should allow people that we need in the country to perform certain tasks, not just, we're not just the caretaker of the world,
right.
Which was never the case. By the way, my grandparents came here from Italy with no money, but they needed cheap labor, so they brought them in. You know what I'm saying? There was not, and they did it the right way. They did it legally. We never really had a policy where just open the border and let people walk in. I mean, it's so absurd. I mean, if you think about it, and that's Joe Biden. I mean, it's just he literally he promised normalcy, and he gave the country to the most politically abnormal people in the world, the far left. Right. Donald Trump is not politically abnormal. Just policy-wise, he's pretty moderate. That's his strength. Right. The other, the strength, his weakness is himself. So this will be an interesting campaign. I think it's going to be close. I don't think there'll be a debate. I think that Biden can't debate, and now he's got the perfect guy not to debate. Just say, well, he didn't debate Nikki Haley. Why should I debate him?
Right.
And it'll be, thank God we have a Constitution, and we have Supreme Court justices that want to uphold the Constitution because, the founders, and again, I'm not a constitutional law expert, but I've done reading on this. The founders created a system where, it shouldn't matter who's in office. We have these rights, and these rights are to personal property, to equal before the law, which it was an uneven path for that, particularly for Black people. I get it, but we persevered through that to a point where those rights are inalienable, and it shouldn't matter who's in office. Right. We do have a First Amendment where we could criticize whoever's in office. And I think that's what's great about this country is that there is a Constitution. And whenever you think it's bleak out there, it's just Joe Biden and it's just Donald Trump, remember, there's also the Constitution that protects you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's funny, Charlie, I keep thinking about the Democrats and Joe Biden at the top of that ticket. And it's so hard for me to imagine that to be the case, that come the actual November, that's going to be on the top of the ticket. Because I almost feel like I'd have to assume two things to be true. One, I'd have to assume that they're not power hungry as a party. And two, that they're stupid, right? And I don't think they're either, right? Because the polls show that people just don't want Biden. I mean, set aside Trump, but to your point, the leap of faith you'd have to vote Biden in for another 4 years. I mean, and these Democrats, if there's any, if you look at the past four, there were like 4 polls this weekend, right? That said that Biden's just, no chance, basically, and that Trump beats him.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say Trump's ahead, but, they haven't started in on him. He's been kind of out of the news. And I think they look at it this way. They're completely power hungry. Listen, they put up John Fetterman or whatever his name was, Fetterman. And the guy was barely alive at that point. He's better now, but still, You know, it gave you pause, and thank God he's better. I mean, we're not wishing harm on anybody. But here's the thing. Here's their calculus, my view. They don't have a good bench, no matter what you. I mean, their best bench player would have been Andrew Cuomo, to be honest with you, but he had issues, and he had to resign as governor of New York over stupid stuff. By the way, the stuff that no court found him guilty of. If you follow that story, which I have,
right.
But still, he was their best shot. After that, the bench gets really weak. So then, on top of that, you have to say, okay. Can we get so Biden? It'd be nice if Biden had a better running mate because Kamala Harris is a lightweight. Well, because of identity politics in the Democratic Party, you're not going to get rid of her. Nope. So you're kind of stuck with him and her if you think about it in many ways. And I've wrapped my head around this a lot. There is not. They're the best that they have right now. If they're the best that they have right now, how do you win? And the only way you win is if you get Donald Trump at the head of if you pray or pull some shit like they did with all these indictments, these ridiculous, and then the Alvin Bragg indictment, which was dumb.
Right.
You get it by having people rally around possibly the worst national candidate the Republicans could put up, and that's Donald Trump. It just optically and for all the reasons we talked about. So I think this is going according to the way they planned it. And by the way, again, they haven't started in on him yet.
Right.
We see, I mean, if you think about it, every day, what dominates the news? Joe Biden falling, Joe Biden stumbling, Joe Biden saying something stupid, the border. You know, what's going to start dominating is, okay, you sure you want that? I would want that. I'm just saying, if you give me both choices, I generally, just so you know, I don't vote. But if I made that promise. I don't vote except for in local elections. But you know, if you're going to tell me like whose policies do you more align with, I obviously more align with Donald Trump's.
Right.
But a lot of people look through that and they're like, "Do we want this guy? He's screaming and yelling." The other day he said, you know, black people like him because they've been to jail like he has. And then he said that. Then he said something about what did he say about like I told Poland didn't want to pay their fair share. I can't imagine that. That's exactly how the NATO conversation went down. And then he said, "Well, I'm going to let Russia invade you, and I'm going to say, go ahead, do it." I mean, it was just, I don't think that's how it went. But I mean, that sort of dopey stuff is like we're going to hear more of that.
Eloquence is not his strong suit, that's for sure.
No, he definitely isn't. It's going to be really interesting to see how that goes down. Now, what about on the Senate side? It was kind of great to see out in California that we have Garvey giving Schiff a run for his money.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. Although, you know, it is California. Yeah. The Senate should go to the Republicans. It's more the House. And that's one of the reasons why I think Haley dropped out. I mean, she was told by her donors to drop out because they want to redirect their money to the House and the Senate.
Right.
So that put the pressure on her. Like, get out now because we have to do this. Yeah. You know, and so that's kind of what's going. That's the sort of brinkmanship that's going on there. And you know, listen, if the Republicans get the Senate, that wouldn't be a bad thing because they can block judicial nominees.
Right.
If they got the House and the Senate, that would, even if they lost the presidency, it would be interesting. It would essentially make Joe Biden and Kamala Harris complete caretakers, at least for the next 2 years.
I mean, strategically for the GOP, that makes a lot of sense to try to make sure they form a blockade to the White House, right? A Democrat White House.
Yeah. And so that, but the odds makers are saying the Democrats pick up the House. And then, there's also the Trump card on that. I mean, his preferred candidates don't do well.
Right.
They underperform wickedly, and they have since 2016.
I mean, that's definitely the case. I mean, now
here's something that we might want to consider. It's a possibility. A Democratic clean sweep and a wipeout of Republicans. What does that do to the GOP?
Well, that would be a disaster for our country, first of all. But
Right. It would be, but it would do something to the Republican Party. It might destroy the Republican Party. And, I don't think people are giving that enough thought, because it is a possibility, because if Trump loses,
right. If Trump loses, we probably have losses down ballot as well.
would lose down ballot, and then optically he could be holding rallies, and I mean this could get like really weird because he's weird.
Right. I mean, I think.
And by the way, your boss, you're the great Bernie Marcus. When I interviewed him, and Bernie told me, and this is when he didn't have his mind made up. He said, "Well, I keep telling Donald," and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, and you could hear Bernie say this to him. You talk to people like you're on the golf course. You got to act president. I mean, this is what Bernie told him. I mean, it's just simple stuff.
Right.
And that is part of his problem.
Yeah. No, I know he's pretty frank with him. He just goes, "Hey, Donald."
Yeah. And by the way, and Donald would listen to him because that's the type of stature Bernie brings to the table. But you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, that is a horrific thought, though, Charlie, that a clean sweep by the Dems. I don't even want to think about that because, then I'll have to find somebody else to live because I can't even imagine our country in the hands of Democrats with a clean sweep after what they've already done these past few years.
Alfredo, there's no place else to live.
I know.
Charlie, before we let you go, tell us about your new book, Go Woke, Go Broke. When's it coming out? Tell us a little bit about it.
Actually, before we go there, though, Elaine, really quickly, if you don't mind, Charlie, can we talk a little bit about Powell and what we're doing with the interest rates this year?
Yeah, my sources are telling me, and I wrote this 2 weeks ago in the Post, maybe 3 weeks ago, I can't remember. Time goes so fast. It's likely to be a June rate cut of 25 basis points. He'll wait until, and then followed up by maybe a September, a small. These will be incremental things, but he's laying the groundwork for that. I mean, there's pretty clear, and he's not doing it now. And it looks like it'll be June.
Tell us about your book.
Okay, so it was interesting because the book started out as a book about Silicon Valley Bank, about how this bank failed because it was so, and I covered it a lot, and we all, and how it was like kind of a canary in the coal mine of how, there's bigger, this bank, which was so obsessed with wokeness, took its eye off the ball and didn't understand risk management. And so in doing that, as I was putting it together, I realized that there's a bigger book here. Actually, even after I pitched it, when I sat down with the prospective publishers, and Hachette is publishing the book, Alex Pappas is the editor there. When I sat down with him, I said, this is bigger. And he said, I love it. I mean, this is Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch. This is Disney. This is BlackRock and Larry Fink. And I got all the sources because I've been covering this stuff for so long. Mm-hmm. And so what I wrote now, so Silicon Valley Bank in the book now is not even a chapter. It's literally a piece of a chapter. And the book takes you through, essentially where we are, where wokeness is, how we got there, how corporations became essentially so progressive in all their policies. What were the causes? And then it talks about how it manifests itself through what went on at Target with gay, something that's supposed to be good, inclusive gay pride, a month of gay pride celebration that mixes children's clothing with transgender clothing. I mean, how did we get to something so perverse?
Right.
And how did Disney go so left? And how does a beer company find a transgender influencer to market their beer in some of the most, bizarre ways? I mean, it was just so weird. You couldn't even make it up. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
By the way, I show it's not just like some woke person at Budweiser. I mean, Anheuser-Busch, which is a division of InBev, a big beverage conglomerate, is strictly follows DEI protocols. And I get into that, and I talk to people there about that.
Hmm.
And then the last chapter is called Woke is Finally Broken. And you get to where we are now, where there's the backlash, and Larry Fink is no longer advocating ESG, won't say the words, and Disney is putting disclaimers in its stock disclosures that, you know, people might not like our politics and might hurt the stock price. And Bob Iger is now saying we got to be more, we got to sell stuff. We can't be political. And I just go through how this thing is starting to unravel, how DEI is in retreat, and that's how I wrote it. And and I think every day I see news that kind of that more or less backs up my general conclusion at the end. The interesting thing is, and this is why I thought we needed to write this book, is that the mainstream. I consider myself part of the mainstream media, but just I don't consider myself some conservative media. I'm just a reporter. But most of my colleagues wouldn't touch this thing. It's sort of intellectually sort of not their cup of tea. I thought it was a big enough story that someone had to journalistically, and that's what I did with this. It does have a point of view, but it's a journalistic. Trust me, I've gone through with Disney. I've gone through with Anheuser-Busch. Talked to everybody. Yeah. Someone had to journalistically unpack how corporate America went there and why, and hold them accountable. And write and do it in a way that's nuanced. For example, with Jamie Dimon, who runs the biggest bank in the world, J.P. Morgan, our America's banker. During the height of the George Floyd riots, he visited a branch, a J.P. Morgan branch, Chase branch in Mount Kisco, New York, and took a knee. He was with all these employees, and they all stood around. And they all took a knee, right? So at the time, we were like, because I was one of them, why is Jamie taking a knee? Is that in solidarity with Black Lives Matter? And which now Black Lives Matter now is a lot more controversial than it was then. Sure. Even though conservatives were pointing out that this is a radical group, this is a group that's Marxist, and this is a group that's like fomenting violence at times. They were like, no, we're not going to comment on that. And so, I mean, they had no problem to leave at least the impression, and I think they were confirming it, that Jamie Dimon was in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. Right. Now, when you go back to them, and I point this out in the book, obviously, they tell you, oh, no, he was just kneeling to fit inside the picture. Now they go on the record saying that. I think that type of context is needed because, these guys are powerful. You know what I'm saying? Sure. If they're gonna like sort of, contract out their corporate policy to some left-wing DEI officer, which they often did. Right. We have to be. We should write about it, and it should be part of the discussion, and we should ask them why. Yeah. And that's what I do in this book.
Yeah, we are looking forward to it. When can we expect to see it on available?
They want to release it in August. I was like talking about doing it now, and here's why they say August. We're now going to be in election season to the with the conventions coming up. When the conventions are in the summer, right? June or July. Yeah,
June, July. Yeah.
August and August is right before the real hits the fan with the election.
Sure.
So they think this is like the perfect time to sell a book like this, when people are on the beach and they need a juicy beach read. Which, trust me, if you hate woke stuff, you're gonna find this very juicy.
Yeah, no, we can't wait to read it. I can't wait to read the little cameo piece on us. So
you're in there about what do I have the scene about no mouse in our house.
Oh, the no mouse in my house campaign. Yes, yeah. That was very well received.
And I do end the book with Bernie prophetically making some really prophetic remarks, and and it was like my honor to get to interview him, and I hope he's doing well, and he's lived a great life, and he still does great things, but I ended it on Bernie.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, it's I can't believe I've had the fortune, the luck that I've had to be able to work with him, and same with Elaine. It's really been an amazing honor to know a man like that.
But I think you guys do a service here. We need advocates for small business, for business community, for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's what you guys do. And I think wokeness is the opposite of entrepreneurial activity. And I think
100%.
That's another part of the book. One basically says it does everything to stamp out the individual.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. Small businesses, especially as Charlie, the past few years, COVID and all that. I mean, and now, of course, with inflation and all this other stuff, I mean, they are just getting hit left and right. I mean, you see it there in New York City. I mean, your small businesses are just getting hammered. I mean,
well, it's funny you say that, because I went around and around with J.P. Morgan and Bank of America on this. They had special during this occurred. This launched during the in 2020 after George Floyd. And by the way, and as you know, small businesses were all hurt in 2020, right? They locked them down. You had to apply for the PPP programming. It was just not great. Yeah. But they had for small business, only for minority small businesses, these special loan programs. And I asked them, I said, look, we're all kind of in this together. We all got locked down. What is the intellectual rationale for giving a successful minority business extra money, as opposed to some white dude that doesn't have that benefit that he has? I mean, shouldn't this all be on need? I mean, we're in the eye of the storm then. Yeah. And by the way, none of them had good answers to that. Just so you know, but that's in the book too.
Oh no, that's. I mean, actually, and I remember that because we're very involved with Secretary Mnuchin on the Paycheck Protection Program and stuff. I mean, that really was for all small businesses. I mean, it didn't matter, black, white, yellow, green. I mean, it really should have been. And then that extra layer that they added at the end for just minorities, just blacks. I mean,
crazy.
It was absolutely. I mean, we had somebody on our team whose family had a small business that got rejected because basically we weren't black, right? I mean,
the whole thing was actually illegal if you think about it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And but we're not there now. We're in a different place now, and I think the book points that out. And we're there because of people like you guys, journalists that went out there and by the way, Chris Rufo's and the people that exposed this. Yeah. Elon Musk. We're there because of people did expose this, and that's what's great about this country. It's why even if the Democrats take over everything, we still have the First Amendment. We can still talk about things and discuss and try to sway people's opinions.
Yeah, if I had tried to do some of the things that I've said about Biden in Russia, I don't think I'd be around much longer.
You'd be in one of those gulags.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, I know you've got to run, but thank you so much for joining us and taking the time on Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. And thank you all for joining us and listening. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com. New episodes come out every Wednesday and Friday, and we'll see you real soon.